I'm telling you, man, that was so great. You know, I know this is probably so totally inappropriate, but if you know me, I'm always inappropriate. You know, your auntie's sort of like letting go of some of her duties around here. If you want a job, come and see me. All right. How blessed are we? Wow. I just feel so happy when she sings. I know she's coming, and I just look forward to this Sunday when she's coming to sing. Wow. Okay, so there was this teacher, and she finds this kid in the wandering the halls during class time. And she comes up and she says, "Do you mind telling me whose class you're cutting this time?" And the young woman said, let's see, okay, well, it's like, I really don't like thinking like that's really important. Because I'm, like I don't get anything out of it. And the teacher said, "It's English class, isn't it?" Yeah, I think she nailed it. So this is Memorial Day weekend, and we have lots of fun things going on all over the place. So I'm glad that you guys all got here, and I'm heading over to the Feast of St. Clair afterwards. I hope somebody else goes. It's really, really fun. I love that festival. That's one of my favorites because it's got history, and I'm really into history, and I like that whole... I used to, when I was a kid, we used to go camping, and we find some pristine place where you couldn't see anybody else for miles and miles, and we would camp, and I would always imagine I was a pioneer person, and the first, immigrant from wherever to find this beautiful place, and it was always just such a high to imagine that for me. So this is Memorial Day, and I wanted to kind of maybe tell you a little of the history of Memorial Day. It actually started after the Civil War, or kind of as it was ending, and we take this weekend to think about all those who have died in any kind of a war, but it was the Civil War that really brought Memorial Day into a holiday. And that is probably started with the fact that Abraham Lincoln, even before the war was over, did his Gettysburg Address, and they set aside some of the ground that battle was fought on as hallowed ground for those people that died there. In Gettysburg, 50,000 men and women died in that battle. And in the whole Civil War, 620,000 people died. Now, if you remember, this was way back in 1862 to 1865 was when the Civil War was. I had no idea there were that many people in America by then, but there was many more. And, one of the things that happens in wars is when a soldier dies from the other side and they don't have the resources to send them home or even know where he belongs or she belongs, they bury him in a local cemetery, and it has turned into, at Arlington Cemetery, which is our military in Virginia cemetery, they have a tomb of the unknown soldier. And so shortly after the Civil War, there was in the area around Missouri, it was actually Columbus, Missouri, they had a big cemetery with a lot of the men that fought on the southern side and on the northern side buried in this cemetery. And the widows of the Southerners, because this was a section, Missouri was the only state in the Union that did not declare what side they were going to be on. So in Missouri, it was particularly difficult for families because people were choosing which side they'd be on based on what they believed about freedom and slavery and those kinds of issues. And so what happened is it threw many families in Missouri into brother against brother, family against family. And so here are these widows that their husbands have fought on the southern side, and they are caring for their husbands' graves, and they realize that the northern soldiers' graves aren't being cared for because they're way far away from their families and their home. And so they take it upon themselves to go out and clean up all the graves of the northerners and to weed them and make them pristine again. And then they agree to bring flowers to their graves when they bring flowers to the graves of their own husbands, because they know that somebody's grieving these soldiers. You know, that tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington had people from World War I, people from World War II, people from the Korean War, and had some soldiers from Vietnam until 1989, when they learned that they could look at the DNA and find who that soldier was from the DNA. You know, DNA has really shifted that whole thing. There's no need now for anybody who is in a war to not know how to get back to his family after he's made his transition out of this life. So, Memorial Day is a difficult one for me to write a talk about because there is this huge part of me that grieves for all those families that lost all their sons and their husbands and all of those people in all of these wars. And there's another part of me that is saddened because we haven't gotten past war yet. You know, my mom and dad were very, alive and very active in the time of the Second World War. My dad almost died in the South Pacific. The island that they were on, the Japanese took back, and so they had to live in the jungles for over 3 months with no food. And when they took my 6'2" dad off that island, he was 90 pounds. War is so useless. It's so senseless to me. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around what could be hard enough that we felt like we had to go kill people we didn't even know. How could there be a problem that was that big that we couldn't sit down and talk it out? So one of the good news is that we're getting better at talking things out. One of my teachers over the years was a man named Marshall. I'm blanking. Yeah, what you said. Anyway, he was a psychologist and he got his PhD, but what he was really, really interested in was how human beings could work out problems or conflicts between them by using a style of conversation that honored both people, even in the midst of a conflict. And so Marshall Rosenberg was the father of nonviolent communication. I guess we could call him the father of nonviolent communication. He died in 2015. But I got the great honor to take a class from him, a week-long class with Marshall, and he was truly a lovely, lovely man who cared so deeply for people, for all people, equally. And so he created this process that now people are certified in teaching to help different organizations to help. Marshall did a ton of work with the gangs in LA and New York, helping them sit down, the Reds and the Blues, or the Crips and the Bloods, or whatever it was. He sat those kids down and taught them how to communicate what they were feeling, and to own their feelings, and to communicate what needs were not getting met, what they needed that they weren't getting that was causing the conflict, and a way to invite the other person to make a request so that they could both do it in a way so there didn't have to be so much violence. I think Marshall himself saved so many young men who ended up in the gangs, who, when they were around him and they learned what he was trying to teach, they turned their entire life around. They went to college. They ended up becoming nonviolent communication practitioners and teaching other kids how to do it. There's kind of a process in nonviolent communication that we use, and yet it's so, they have it down to like 4 steps. But the thing is that each one of those steps has so much depth to it. There's so many things. He's got a book with like 14 chapters, and each one of them is taking deeper and deeper part of these 4 steps. He teaches us about how to give from the heart, not the head. When you're giving from your head, you're always thinking about what you're going to get back. When you're giving from your heart, you're giving in a way where just the ability to give is your gift. I had an uncle that used to write poetry, and one of his poems he wrote was, "Everything that you give away, you get." You can't give anything to anyone without having the universe bring you something you need, or it's always in perfect balance. The universe is balance extraordinaire. So everything you give out comes back to you. And that includes whether you're giving out hate and violence or whether you're giving out love and peace. It always comes back to you. So giving from the heart was one of his ideas. And then he realized that he had to unblock people's compassion to get them into their hearts. If we feel like we have been so abused in our life, we have had such a hard life, people have done stuff to us that they shouldn't have done, they were unfairly accused of things maybe they didn't do. When you walk in that consciousness, and that's a state of consciousness that so many people walk in, when you walk in that consciousness, you are putting out, people are going to take advantage of me, people are going to hurt me, it's not fair, I'm going to get mine before somebody tries to take it away from me. And you walk in this state of fear in trying to claw your way ahead in life. That state of consciousness brings you more of it. You get more and more and more of it. And it escalates and escalates and escalates until these 2 gangs are killing each other. The same thing happens on our world stage today. It's really quite interesting to look at what's happening in our world with the Russian thing, and then there's the North Korean thing, and then there's the terrorist attacks in Manchester and other places, how everything is getting a little more frightening, a little more worrisome. And yet, if we buy into it, whoever is, trying to convince us that we better do it their way wins. If we buy into that consciousness of fear, then we are controlled. if we stand firm in a consciousness of unconditional love, nobody can control you. You know that? It is amazing when we think about it. All you have to do is move from fear to love, and when you're standing in a consciousness of pure love, the only thing that can come back to you is love. No one can control you. No one can harm you. No one can do anything to you. And so Marshall's life's work was helping people move into a state of consciousness where they could feel enough compassion and love for everyone that they could actually feel free enough to share what they were feeling, to share, to take responsibility for their own feelings, but to share how it made them feel. And then they learned how to make requests, how to say what they needed they weren't getting. Now, when you think of these really tough gang members, it's hard to even fathom that they would admit to any needs at all. You pretty much have to get them cornered to get them to think they needed anything. And yet, the reality is, once they learn how to communicate, how to talk about what's going on, and making requests and being willing to fulfill requests that somebody's asking of them, they move from that fear to love. This guy's not going to hurt me anymore because he asked of something from me and I could provide it, and I did, and now we're friends. That giving of compassion and love can shift everything in a very short period of time. One of the things he stresses a lot is observing without evaluating. Have you ever done that? I don't know if you've seen this, but there's this little commercial on. It's kind of I'm not even sure exactly what it's advertising. Well, I guess it's advertising something, but it's this great, big, huge, bulked up guy, probably in his mid-30s, who has tattoos from his neck all the way down his arms and his shoulders. He's just completely tattooed. And he is standing there with his little daughter, who's about 4 years old, singing, "I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here is my handle, here is my spout." And then they fall down, and then she pours him tea, pretend tea. And they drink it and have this wonderful father-daughter moment. And he doesn't look like your typical father. He's got hair down to his waist and tattoos everywhere. He doesn't look like a person you would peg into a box as, a really caring father. But what is true is you never know what's in another person's heart. And if you observe somebody by the way they look or the length of their hair or anything about them other than, looking at them through observation without evaluation on the outside, you can't get past onto the next steps of really creating a relationship with somebody who may touch your life in ways you can never even imagine. So I believe the power of compassion, the power of empathy, the power of requesting that which will enrich your life from someone and being willing to help someone else find what they need to enrich their lives, and be able to sit down and talk about it without all the ego stuff of, I'm too tough to ask for anything. It's really hard for me to ask for help. I have times as a minister where I would really like to go pray with someone or give them a sacred healing or something, and I can only offer. I'm not the one who can say yes. I'm the one who can offer and want to do it. But unless you're willing to say yes to the universe, unless you're willing to say, wow, somebody wants to bless me with their prayers or with something, then you're going to open yourself to more good. Because whatever you are willing to receive, you're also willing to give. That's the way it works. What you're receiving is absolutely a result of the circle of giving and receiving. We know that. We know that. And so that's my hope for this Memorial Day. I don't like war. I can't even fathom killing another person. And, I'm sure there is something that, probably if anybody was trying to hurt one of my kids or grandkids, I probably would do what I needed to do to stop them. But to go and kill people you don't know for a reason that our leaders are so inept they can't sit down and talk anything out doesn't work for me. And I know that's probably not what people that, got drafted and had to go to war, whether they liked it or not, which happened in Vietnam and World War II and World War I. At least now it's a volunteer army. And yet, even that, there is problems with it. Even that, there's problems. So, I kind of feel like this whole idea is similar to the prodigal son story. The prodigal son, he was kind of, had a chip on his shoulder because in those days, the oldest son inherited everything, and the youngest son only got a little bit. They got like a payoff, right? A little bit of a payoff. And so the prodigal son, not thinking that's really fair, said to his dad, hey, give me my money and I will take off and go, make a success of my life, whatever I do. And of course he takes off and he wastes all of his money and parties a lot and does all of those things and loses everything. And in the end, he's feeding pigs to just try to get enough money so he could eat. And he looks at what he's feeding the pigs, and it's better than what he's eating himself. Nowadays, you just have to look at Wonder Bread and get that. But anyway, nothing against Wonder Bread. When he comes back, guess who gets the chip on their shoulder then? The older brother. Because he stayed home and did all the work of the farm and kept everything going and everything running. And when his younger brother comes home, his father is so happy and so excited because he thought he was dead and now he was alive. And he returned to himself. He returned to the God essence that he is. He returned to the truth of his being, which is pure love, and he came home. And that's what happened when all of us come home. When we come home to the Spirit we are, when we come home to the child of God that we are, and we live from that, we all come home. And it took the father to say, to the older son, all that I have is yours. It's always been all yours. And here is your brother, who we thought was dead, who's now found and changed. You cannot go through the prodigal son story without being changed. Now, anybody besides me been through the prodigal son story? Riotous living? Okay, yeah, got it. But what we know right now is that those little ideas that I'm not getting my share, or that how should he get a party when he ran off and wasted a bunch of money, all of that is observing with judgment, not non-judgment. We won't understand each other until we can get past our own first impressions, our own ideas of who somebody is. So this Memorial Day, Let us give thanks for all of those people that made that ultimate sacrifice. And let's pray that we are beyond war, and that from now on we can sit down at the table and talk it out. We have to do that first in our own lives. We can't carry around what we think is a slight or a hurt from somebody. If you feel like you are carrying something around from somebody that you can't seem to completely let go of and forgive, you need to have a conversation. And you need to know that your feelings are yours. And you also need to know that every human being has needs. We have physical needs, emotional needs, mental needs, spiritual needs. We have all those needs. And when we can ask another human being who is also a carrier of the Christ Spirit to sit down and talk with us and help them get their needs met and help you get your needs met, we can do anything. We can go anywhere. We can create anything because we set a field, a consciousness where anything is possible. And so I wanted to share with you, oh, my book is gone. No, it's here. I wanted to share with you a quote from one of my favorite authors, and it's Anne Lamott. Has anybody read Anne Lamott? Some of you read her. Yeah, let's see if I can find it. Okay, it's at the other side, I bet. She's really, really a connected person, in my opinion. I mean, she's just so, anyway, I'm going to just remember it. She said, sometimes the streets of my mind are so scary I can't walk down them alone. You know, we never know what anybody else is thinking, and if you read an Anne Lamott book, she's a woman of faith and courage, and she looks at things pretty straight on. But even she has times when the streets of her mind aren't safe. And that's when we know that we have forgotten who we really are. And that's when somebody here, somebody in this world is ready and waiting to remind you who you are. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God, the light of the world. And that is where the world is going. God bless you.